of energy running through the energy field, the body of the earth, so that somehow Kundalini and the power in the land, the power in the body, also exists out there in the land. And that's really what Druidry is predicated on, is this idea that, you know, we're not separate, that our spiritual development isn't just about our own growth and exiting from this place, but is actually about the mysterious relationship that exists between the inner and the outer, the landscape of our bodies and the landscape of the world, and that there are these lines of energy and power running through the land, running through our bodies, and that somehow part of the meaning of our being here in this world is to come into a relationship, so that the inner and outer meet in some way.
Is it a growing movement? Because it seems so right for the time. So.
Well, you know, at first sight it seems so anachronistic, isn't it? And peculiar. You know, when I was a kid, the way I got into Druidry was my father worked for the old chief of Druid in London, and so he was a family friend and visited, and so I got to know him and started to train with him. And you know, the thought of sort of Druids existing in 21st century, in a 21st century world seems very quaint and sort of strange and anachronistic. But there's a way, I mean, the image that comes to me strongly is, you know, the one of the salmon returning to the spawning grounds. There's something about the way I think we've come to a very critical point in the story of humanity, you know. And people say, oh, every generation thinks it's, you know, come to some sort of critical end point. But the point is, it's undeniable that, you know, that there are 5 sort of runaway trains all heading in one direction, and that direction is us, and it's you know, climate change, overpopulation, resource depletion, species extinction, and I can't think of what the 5th one is, but that's enough. You know, and they're all coming, and they're all, you know, and so we're reaching a particular point in the story of humanity, a particular ending, really, I think. And not ending in a final sense, but the ending of a chapter rather than the ending of a book. And when you get to the end of cycles, it's very common, it's a natural tendency to return to the beginning. Which is why when you see a documentary, you know, when you start to see shots that open the documentary, you know you're coming to the end of the film, you know, because you're going back to the beginning, you know, and same thing with stories. So we're sort of returning, so I think returning to our roots, returning to the old ways is not a step backwards, it's a step forwards in a strange sort of way. You know, like the famous poem of T.S. Eliot, you know, where he says, but returning, but only knowing the place for the first time.
But it has changed. I mean, Druidry has changed.
Hugely.
Yes.
Yes.
In that intervening time.
Yes. Yes, so it's not as if people who are practicing Druidry today are practicing something that our ancestors would have practiced thousands of years ago. We're sort of drinking from the same source, connecting with the same roots, but you know, but in a new way for this new time. You know, one of the themes to sort of sum up, perhaps, you know, one of the themes is in Druidry today is looking at the importance of story and of art and of creativity, the whole bardic tradition that exists in Druidry, which recognises the value of creativity and of being in the world, of being creative in the world, and the value of nature, getting back in touch with nature. And for me, those 2 great sources, nature, the natural world, and the artistic and the creative, and it's fed by those 2 streams, which I think are fantastically sort of relevant to our lives today.
How do you feel about Druidry being accepted as a religion recently?
It's good. It's been. When you say it's been accepted by religion, what you're referring to is the fact that the Charity Commission has granted charitable status to a group that is a Druid group. Any religion in Britain is accepted. There's no process of official recognition of a religion. So what the newspapers, when they got hold of the story, in a sense, reported it incorrectly. It wasn't that Britain, you know, the newspaper was that Britain has has officially recognised Druidry. It sounds great, but I mean, it doesn't quite work like that. However, I think it's good that the Charity Commissioners have recognised that Druidry can be a valid religious approach. The Charity Commissioners were very focused on Christianity for a long time, and so it represents a step forward. And I think, what you see with Druidry, the story of Druidry over the last sort of 20, 30 years, is a classic story of something that innovative ideas that start off on the edge and gradually move towards the centre. So you can look at them all. You can look at, I don't know, sort of, all the kind of idea, meditation, the power of the mind, alternative agriculture, alternative education. All these ideas that 20, 30 years ago would be considered sort of wacky by mainstream society and all the rest of it. And gradually they drifted towards the centre. So now you can talk about meditating or organic food or these things in a kind of ordinary social setting, and they don't think you're bananas. Whereas, a while back they did. So there's this movement of towards the centre. And Druidry was at the very fringes of sort of alternative religious movements 30, 40, 50 years ago. And it's gradually sort of shifting, it's becoming more accepted. So, for instance, Druidry is part of the national curriculum in religious studies amongst some of the education boards. So we have sort of packages for teachers that they can download off our website and so on.
Any more questions? Well, Philip, thank you ever so much. This is another speaker who's brought a huge energy to our life influence. And that's what it's all about, because that's what people in Lewis seem to have. Fantastic new interpretations on our existence. I am a DFL, Jenny is a DFL. The country around us is clearly the huge experience that we enjoy down here, but actually, I for one truly do need the stories, the people who people that countryside to make the walks that much more relevant to me. And I think that's been the stimulation tonight, which has been fabulous. I'd also just say one lovely little thing which I will, when we first spoke at the solstice, Philip said a fantastic thing to me, which was, I don't actually preach, I invite people to discover. And I think that's what tonight's will be about. Thank you ever so much. Thank you.